Okay. All right. Good. Well, welcome to the show. And as always, I'm just a small part of this good time and informative venue that we have going on here across the country. I'm Carlos Salazar, your friendly neighborhood real estate broker in Miami, Florida. And all the way across, not the pond, but all the way across the United States, we have my beautiful, loving, caring, intelligent, superstar real estate broker, Jerry Pujals from Homestead Real Estate. And he's going to introduce our beautiful guest. How's that? Was that okay?
Then we forgot to say unleashed.
Unleashed.
So I appreciate that, Carlos. So I'm definitely surrounded by some of the people that make up they're a good part of this journey. You know, Hilda Hensley owns Benchmark Mortgage. She's been working with me for over 25 years. Yeah. So we have a little bit of experience, and we've done a lot of volume together. We've referred each other a lot of business, and we have insights as to what each other's clients have to say about the other, and hence why we continue to refer each other business, because we feel like taking care of the client is the most important thing. From doing that, everything else seems to fall into place. Ervin Hechavarria is a newer part of our team. I'm so grateful that Hilda coincidentally made the introduction. And Ervin worked for the company that I used to work for 25 years. He used to work there and made a decision to jump over the local pond and come over and hang his hat over here. And we're forever grateful. If Ervin, can I maybe show off to my cousin a little bit? And why did you do that? Why did you leave a powerhouse brokerage, the number one brokerage in the area by a lot? Why did you leave that and come to a tiny little boutique office like us? And what makes us different?
Well, this may surprise you, Jerry, but it's just like Carlos said, it was your good looks.
Oh, that surprised me.
No, being part of a big powerhouse brokerage firm is great. But in the long term, you realize the only reason your business is coming towards you, or that you're continuously to work with good people, is all the agent. And a lot of times the larger firms are an impediment to continuing to do great business. And there were a lot of roadblocks and a lot of levels, things for approvals. And, being with Jerry at Homestead, it gave me the ability to really think out of the box, create solutions for our clients that otherwise any other broker in Napa can't do. I actually heard someone who was friends of my previous client said that after my move to Homestead, that I am now disrupting the local real estate industry here in Napa with, what I hope is my personality, my professionalism. But it's being at Homestead has really empowered me to be the agent that I should always have been in Napa.
Well, thank you for that. And I was sharing with Hilda the other day. And as a matter of fact, I shared with Danielle that you said a couple of things at the real estate conference that we just participated in San Diego.
Was that before or after the wine?
That was way after the wine. I some of those compliments that you were giving me, which I'm grateful for that wine. Some of those compliments were really well received, and I shared them with Danielle because she's a big part of it. Danielle runs accounting for us, and Ervin, when he jumped over, started working on the first one of his first big listings, and he started to question, okay, how does this all happen, Jerry? Because you're telling me that this house magically is going to be transformed into this beautiful thing. You're providing me with the liquidity and the funds and the guys and the this and the that, and it's funny. I don't give enough stock to the journey that it took to get that, because that's almost a 10-year journey to get that machine to run as well oiled as it is. But when Ervin complimented that it is in fact streamlined, and that it made his life so much easier and it made the client experience so much better, that's when it all sort of, there was that moment at that evening that I thought, wow, everything that Susan and I have been working towards has come together. When somebody by the way, Ervin's been in the business more than 20 years, so he's right in there with us. He's got a lot of experience in the East Coast and towards the Orlando market, which he's still selling in, by the way, successfully at a reasonable volume, highly in Napa Valley at a very high volume, and he has sold also in New York City. So he's worked in some markets that are where you have to stand out, and you have to sort of let your presence be known, or otherwise you're not gonna show up. So impressive individual who's given us those compliments, and they definitely didn't go well received, because it was really appreciated, Ervin. I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
go ahead, Hilda.
Jerry, did you say what the compliment was about? Like what the
Yeah, no, I don't think so. The compliment was really, well, sort of, kind of. I mean, the compliment was really about how everything worked. And one of Ervin's concerns were, I'm not, going to be able to keep track of invoices and this and that in the middle of a project while I'm successfully selling a lot of other homes. Go ahead, Ervin.
I was preparing spreadsheets, files. I have to keep this together. Who's going to manage it? Like, it was just a lot. It was, jumping into the first real thorough renovation of a home, to which Homestead and Jerry were putting up the funds to renovate. And we're looking at significant amounts of money. And I was like, wow, this is going to be a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. And Jerry's like, oh, just call Jesus, he'll be out there. I'm like, great, but who's going to verify his costs? Who's going to say, okay, this is the appropriate fee for this? And I'm in my head saying, this is all going to fall on me. And no, it was actually very easy.
Well, I appreciate that. That took a while. And also I want to share with all of us that, Hilda texted me a little while ago because one of our appointments got moved. And right now, in any one of our businesses, things have shifted to the point where we want to make sure that we're fair to not only to ourselves, but to our clients, and we're flexible for our clients. So Hilda has one of her clients that she needs to get off the call in about 25 minutes. And my response to Hilda and her text was, some Hilda is better than no Hilda. And I so feel that way. So I also have a vision right now. I'm having this vision, Carlos, and I'll share it with you. And then I'll let you explore in your own mind, Carlos. And let me know by the end of this how you feel about this group talking in a format like this, maybe once a month, because this is high level, very high level professionalism and behavior that can only be captured by the 4 people that are in this group right now. Not saying that we haven't had guests with a ton of experience, but I think you're going to have a lot of fun and some of the discussions today. So I want you to offline later tell me, what did you think about this, and be really candid and honest. I will never tell them.
Well, the funny thing is that I've always believed, followed, and listened to birds of a feather flock together. So just because I know who you are, I know who you surround yourself with. So there's really no interview period. Like, is that a good person? So it's automatic. And look, the second I met Ervin, for 3 seconds, when I was FaceTiming you like 2 weeks ago, and automatically, the first time I spoke to Hilda, which she's helped us on a transaction down here, one of my investment properties on a refinance. The first time I spoke with her, just the first two seconds is like, of course, it's going to be another amazing person. And I'm not saying it. Remember my philosophy. I never give any false compliments. I don't believe in that. You know what I mean? I'd rather just stay quiet than to say something. So when I give someone a compliment, it comes from the heart and I mean it. Otherwise, I just sit back and just nod. You know what I mean? So I'm not surprised that these are great people and they have a lot of great people that are working for you, because birds of a feather flock together. So,
well, Hilda, I say Carlos has one of the highest EQs that I think a man has ever had. Not something that not a strong suit of mine, but Carl, my cousin, has amazing emotional intelligence, and he's right. When this guy says something, he means it, or he doesn't fucking say a thing. So I'm sorry I dropped the F-bomb, but it's who Carlos Salazar is. So,
it's a weird philosophy. Like, tell the boys, like, that we have 3 beautiful boys, they're men now. And I told them, listen, you should never break bread with anyone if you don't genuinely have love for them, and then leave there. You should never interact with someone in that sort of personal level. You know what I mean? If you don't mean it, if not, you're just a hypocrite. You know what I mean? It's not saying you don't have to deal with difficult people, but I'm saying whenever you get to those type of scenarios, I think it's good to be honest and transparent, and people know where you're coming from. So,
well, I think when Ervin comes over and Hilda comes over, they're very annoyed that what we break is a sweet potato, not bread, and they want to change that, and I'm just not going down like that.
I want a lechon asado.
oh my God! Yeah, FedEx you one. There's a great place down here.
Hilda doesn't even eat lechon, but they cook lechon in her house all the time.
Let me tell you, a good Cuban restaurant over there in Napa, like a really authentic, will like go crazy, but I don't know who would run it, but it would be a home run.
Yeah, that would be, I've always thought that, but boy, the restaurant business, that's a tough business.
Yes.
No, we need something like Palacio de los Jugos.
Palacio de los Jugos, that's what we all
need. Another one. Yeah, we'll open up the 1,000th one, right?
That's inexpensive, and there's not much inexpensive food in Napa.
Yeah.
Well, that guy figured out the oxbow model a long time ago because he just rents spaces. He doesn't even run the food anymore.
Right.
Yeah. He's a real estate guy talking about that.
Yeah.
And we're talking about Palacio de los Jugos in Miami, Florida. There's a bunch of them. You're right, Carlos. And what he has become, it used to be a little fruit stand back when Carlos and I were little kids. And as a matter of fact, you can walk to the first one from Carlos' house. Carlos' house where Carlos' mom and Carlos grew up in. You can literally walk just a mile and a half down the street toward Palacio de los Jugos, which was then operated by the owners. It was a little produce stand. The same thing that I kind of dreamt of when I opened up my produce business. I thought it was a Palacio de los Jugos the way that I was going. And then I realized that selling one yam or one sweet potato wasn't as profitable as selling the whole box. And then that's how I got into the wholesale produce business way before real estate. But what a story that Palacio de los Jugos found his way into success by way of owning a lot of real estate.
Always a common denominator, real estate.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hey, Carlos, I know you and I got into that discussion yesterday of agency. And I just thought, while we have Hilda on the line, while we have this presence, can you and Ervin talk a little bit about that agency, the agency that's allowed in Florida, and the one that you guys do not necessarily partake in dual agency the way that we do over here? And I would like for the consumer to kind of understand what some of the differences are between the East Coast and West Coast in that regard. By the way, I haven't pitched our company, our small little boutique, high-powered boutique in Napa Valley is Homestead Real Estate, and we primarily focus here in the wine country, Napa, Sonoma. And then Hilda, you can introduce your company, and Ervin, introduce yourself, because if anybody cares to buy or sell real estate, I highly recommend Ervin Hechavarria, as well as for mortgages, Hilda Hensley. Hilda, go.
Thanks. So Hilda Hensley, I'm with Benchmark Mortgage. I'm celebrating my 15th year with Benchmark Mortgage. I have an office in Napa and an office in Roseville, California, and service the entire state of California and multiple other states as well.
Hilda, there's something going on with your mic. So would you mind repeating the second office?
The second office is in Roseville, California. And it's a satellite office, and Roseville, if nobody's aware, is still a great opportunity. There are many new developments. There's a lot of senior communities there that are literally as nice as some country clubs. I'm shocked every time I'm at one of these senior communities. Thousands of homes, manicured lawns, golf courses, tennis courts. It's amazing. And a real estate still affordable. You can buy a beautiful single family residence in Roseville, which Roseville is it is the fastest growing community in the state of California. And you can still purchase a home there for $600,000. It's a beautiful home.
Does that come with plumbing? Does it include plumbing for that price?
Yeah, it does have plumbing.
Oh, okay.
Napa, it does not.
That's a good price. That's a good price.
Yeah, it's a very nice community.
And not far from the Sacramento airport, which is my favorite.
Correct. Correct. You can be at the Sacramento airport inside in under 30 minutes. Parked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ervin, you're next.
Well, I'm Ervin Hechavarria. My father's Cuban, my mother's Puerto Rican. And I originally started in real estate due to my dream of flipping homes. I was in my early 20s. And I said, what better way to get to know the business than get my real estate license and learn the market, learn the in and outs. And when I did that, a friend of mine was best friends with the #1 real estate agent in the Mid-Atlantic region at Long & Foster. And just because of the pre-existing relationship there, I was offered a job to come and work in Washington, D.C. So in my first year, a team of 4 agents, we had almost 170 transactions for that year.
Wow.
So talk about my first year in real estate. Wow. I just got a great education. Unfortunately, Washington, D.C. wasn't calling or drawing my attention. And I quickly said, I want to live in New York City. So I then applied or sent my resume to some of the top agents in New York City. And I ended up with 5 offers. Luckily, the best offer I received was from the person I wanted to work with, who quickly, after my first year working with him, made me a partner. So him and I stayed together for about 8 years before I went into work for a boutique company marketing new developments in New York City, which I ended up becoming director of international outreach, traveled the world marketing our developments in Manhattan. Unfortunately, the financial crisis ended all of that. I went back into regular brokerage services with Corcoran Group in New York. And then I met my husband, and he was finishing residency in Florida, and that's my home state. So I made my move back there, spent 3 years there in real estate, and we moved out to Napa 4 years ago, but I continue to do business in Florida and in California.
Well, I got to say that, I've been to your home and it's beautiful. And from here, I can see, I'm bragging a little bit for you. I can see the door to your wine cellar to the left of the rear. And I'm going to encourage you from here on out to just make the wine cellar the studio, because it's got enough space. It's going to be great for sound. And it looks, Carlos, every bottle in here is just insane.
It's also cold.
Yeah, it's at the right temperature.
And and Ervin, if you need to make space in that cellar, you let me know next time I'm in Napa, and I'll do the best I can to make a dent with all those bottles, so you can make your studio.
Well, the challenge for Ervin is that when guests come to his house and they bring wine, he's like, "Really? Did you have to bring wine? Why? Why did you bring?" Why? Hilda's very much a wine. My best friend in the world. My best friend is a little bit of a wine snob. Ervin, Hilda would love coming to your house.
We're going to have to make that happen.
She would approve. She was so approved.
You always bring wine.
Yeah.
Hilda's
like, oh, this Florida boy doesn't know anything about wine.
She'll always bring. Yeah, Hilda brings the right wine, by the way. Not like other people that have come to your house that come in with an $8 bottle of wine. Anyway, so agency, gentlemen. I like to just sit back and kind of watch this happen. I know Carlos has strong feelings about it, and as I learned about it, I thought, God, there's some of those things that I wish we had over here. I had the same feelings when the week before last we had my other cousin, who's a real estate attorney in Florida, and oh man, I love some of the things, Hilda, that happen in Florida when it comes to the contract, and how a lot of times, you know how we have escrow officers here, and we appreciate our senior escrow officers and what a beautiful job they do. But like us, escrow officers over here are not lawyers. They're not, they should not ever be interpreting a contract, nor should we as real estate agents. We shouldn't be interpreting a contract. We literally should just be just stating the facts of what's in the contract, but we shouldn't make meaning out of anything that's in there, because we didn't draft it, and we're really not trained to draft a language for contracts, which is why we have in-house counsel to help us with anything like that, because we're not supposed to be doing that ourselves. I think you guys have a lot more in the way of guardrails around that. But then I found that one thing you explained to me, Carlos, which is a transactional broker, how that could be misunderstood and the consumer be misled into thinking they have somebody who's representing them in a way that they should, but they're not really supposed to. So I'm just going to let you guys go at it. And Carlos, I know you have a lot you can say about this.
Yeah. I mean, there's 3 levels of representation in Florida, right? That you can represent a consumer as a real estate professional. So the highest best protection for the consumer is agency as a single agent. Then there's transaction broker, which is basically just the facilitator of the transaction, right? You can't negotiate, you can't do anything else but facilitate the transaction, and there's a limited amount of confidentiality, a limited amount of loyalty, things like that. And then there's no brokerage relationship. So for years, since I started the brokerage, we've only represented our clients as a single agent, both on the buying side and the selling side. Because why not offer them the highest level of protection and service that you can? And it's okay. It's a lot more liability for the brokerage, but I'm willing to take that on, because how do you show that you really have skin in the game if you really don't have skin in the game, right? So the reason that I'm so fervent about agency representation down here in Miami, my specific market, I deal with most brokerages will not represent clients as a single agent down here. There's a lot of agents, brokerages down here that they'll have. For example, they have a flat fee model where they give agents 100% commission and they just charge them per transaction. So they have like a ton of agents, right? So they don't take a lot of responsibility in those agents' training and how they deal with the consumer and so on and so forth. But you have those transaction brokers that don't have that level of representation acting as single agents, right? So negotiating contracts, guiding customers, consulting, things like that, which they can't do. And there's really no checks and balances down here. And the only way that we can do checks and balances is control what type of agents we work with in transactions. At least in our market down here, because it's really like still the Wild West. Like, I mean, the association down here doesn't even turns a blind eye to this, because in my view, all those hundreds and thousands of agents are just revenue generating for the association, right? So why stop that, or why make them, provide services at a higher level? I think that the more sophisticated teams and the more sophisticated brokerages may offer a single agency, but most of them don't. So the only way 2 realtors from, let's say, in a brokerage in Florida can work for the same transaction on both sides in the same brokerage, you'd have to transition away from a single agent, and your client has to agree to that. So a lot of times we have in the listing agreements, we'll have, either they give us the authorization to transition if we're going to work with both sides of the transaction. But at that point, I explain to them, from this point forward, I cannot consult you, guide you, or use your information to their detriment or vice versa. It's just a facilitated the transaction. So those conversations down here don't happen. Consultations down here don't happen, but they happen at our brokerage, but they don't. Just sign the paper. We represent you as a transaction broker, and the name to the uneducated consumer, transaction broker. It seems like something important. Seems like, okay, and they just move past that, right? They don't really explain what that means, and so that's the challenge that I have in my marketplace. And I was really excited to talk to Ervin, because I'm curious as to how they deal with agency representation and this type of thing in his market, and I'm wondering if there's any similarities or maybe not.
Well, in Florida, yeah, you can transition if you're representing both the buyer and the seller, and the fiduciary responsibility to the buyer and seller goes away. There's a lesser threshold. But, and I agree with you, Miami is the Wild West. I've done deals in new developments. Most recently, it was the Ritz-Carlton in Sunny Isles. But Miami, I gotta say, people just don't follow the rules, and people ethically, morally, are in the business to make money, and they don't care about anything else. I've seen agents take people out, give them lots to drink, and next thing you know, they sign on a dotted line for a deal, for a purchase. And a lot of these purchasers are foreign, and they don't have the knowledge that somebody living here domestically would necessarily have to read through some of these contracts and so on. But either way, I have been I have represented both buyer and seller in deals, and the best person I like to work with is myself. But in many of those instances, I have the moral and ethical standards to take care of both of my clients. I've never had an issue. But would I necessarily trust most agents to act in a certain way? Probably not. And especially in a market like South Florida, which, you know, people do a nice song and dance, but I'm not sure if the substance is there. And, you know, every agent you meet in Miami, it feels they have luxury real estate. You know, that's what they focus on, but they haven't even done one transaction yet. And so would I necessarily trust an inexperienced agent who's trying to sell themselves as a luxury agent only to transition in the middle of a transaction? No, but from the sounds of it, they're not even soliciting to be single agent to begin with.
No, yeah, because it's a difficult conversation, right? Because you have to have some knowledge, you have to understand the levels of representation, and you have to really give a crap, right? Because you have to read you have to protect and represent the consumer, your client, to the best of your ability. That includes the highest level of protection or fiduciary duty, so on and so forth. So for me, it's always been a challenge. So I was laughing actually, because when the whole NAR, the antitrust ruling came down about the commissions, you know, I've heard, you know, agents going crazy. Oh my God, what's going to happen now? And I'm like, it doesn't really affect me. That would never affect me. Why? Because when I work, for example, when we represent a buyer as a single agent, we explain to the buyer, listen, you are hiring us and you are paying us, let's say 3% commission if and when we find a transaction that you close on. Now, if the selling side happens to offer any commission, then we'll credit that towards whatever you owe us, but we don't rely on any commission. So that includes if we purchase a home that's not offering commission. So they're already cognizant that they're paying our commission. If there is no commission involved, or if there's any departure from the 3%. Same thing with the sellers. I explain to them, listen, you're paying us 6%. We will then select and choose what we offer any agent if that's appropriate. But you're paying us. So you're not paying any buyer's agent commission in advance. You're paying us, and then we make the decision of what we offer any particular agent and things like that. So it's a very simple conversation we have with both sides. And so the antitrust ruling and agents, and I agree to a certain extent with the sellers saying they don't want to pay someone's salary, but the buyers, at least in my market, the buyer's agents, they're scared to have that conversation to make someone sign a buyer brokerage agreement, which we only work with, right? So they're scared to do the paperwork and to go with that when they get to that part that says, okay, this is how much you would have to pay if there's no commission, things like that. They don't want to have those uncomfortable situations. So down here, for the most part, if Ervin calls me, let's suppose I generate leads through Zillow, and Ervin calls me, oh yeah, hi, I'm interested in 123 Apple Street. The first thing they do is, Ervin, I'll meet you at the place. We'll go show it to you right now, right? But the first thing you should do is, Ervin, let's set up a Zoom meeting. If you're local, let's meet in person. If you're from out of town, let's do a meeting. Let me give you a quick overview of what that purchasing process looks like. How are you purchasing? You know, and just run everything down and do that consultation, which is important to level set, because guess what? It's okay to say no to a client that you don't align with. Like, for example, if we come across clients that know more about real estate than we do, know more about contractual transactions than we do, know more about escrow, know more about contingencies, know more about financing. So I tell them, you don't need us. If you're proficient in all these different fronts to really handle a real estate transaction, you really don't need an expert, right? So that's kind of like the, oh, bye, Hilda.
Hi, good to see you.
We'll do it again.
Tell your better half I said hello.
I will. Or which one? Jerry's the better half or my better half?
Hi.
Your better half.
Okay.
And I have a story. I have a little story that, so I started in real estate in New York City, was 2002, but right before I started in my career there, they had recently changed the law, because prior, both agents, the agent for the seller and the agent of the buyer, owed their fiduciary responsibility to the seller, because the seller was paying the commission. So in New York said the seller's paying the commission. So both agents, the buyer's agent and seller's agent, owes the highest level of loyalty to the seller. And here, buyers didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's funny. I did a post, an Instagram post, to explain this, very short, like 9 minutes or 8 minutes. And I had people and former clients DM me. You would think they DM me on something else, right? Like, oh, really? Is it time to buy now? Or is it time to sell? They're like, we didn't know that. That is great information. And I challenged them, right? So I told them, and this is how I battle what we deal with down here with the agents down here. I challenged them in the video. I go, I challenge you, if you're working with an agent or you're interviewing an agent, to ask them one question: what level of representation do you offer me? And then I tell them, sit back and just be quiet and watch what happens. Because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be like, what? listen, just sign it. It's not a big deal. That's the conversation,
And so in your instance in Miami, people are acting or saying officially they're transaction brokers or transaction agents representing a buyer or so on. When you have a listing, what's because in the Florida MLS, at least Stellar MLS, the one I'm a member of, we can change for a transaction broker. We don't have to pay them a full commission. And I haven't had an experience in my career there of a transaction broker coming to me with a buyer.
That all you see down here are transaction brokers working with buyers. It's rare to see a single agent working with the buyer. It's very odd, and you can tell automatically when you work with someone how they're representing them. And then in Florida, the default representation is transaction broker. So you don't really have to disclose that. Where you have to disclose is when you're a single agent. So the listing agreement down here is 3 versions of it, right? So there's the one version where you're a single agent, and it discloses there that we're representing you as a single agent, and it delineates all the different things that you have to be obedient, fiduciary, the whole 9 yards of what you offer them. And then the transaction broker one is a little bit different. And then there's a no brokerage ratio, which we don't give commission to anyone that has no brokerage representation, right? At all. So so the commission that we offer for the most part to transaction brokers is less than I would pay to a single agent, because you end up carrying the weight of the transaction on your shoulders 9 times out of 10 down here, especially when you're a listing agent. You carry the transaction from beginning to end. For example, we went to contract yesterday on and I don't want to throw this guy under the bus. I'm not going to mention his name or anything, but we went transaction yesterday with a nice property we had listed in Key Biscayne, an oceanfront condo, beautiful 9 yards, 9 yards. And then this guy's the broker of that company, and we go to contract. And then today is, hey, can you give me the wire instructions? And I call him and I'm like, hey, on the first page of the contract, the escrow agent, their phone number, their email, their fax number, their address, it's right there. Do you want me to do that for you? Or, oh, okay, I guess I'll do it. So that's the mindset down here, right? So you always do a heavy lift when you're selling, at least in the market that we're working with down here. And again, and I always give this disclosure when I talk about this or make a post. There are a phenomenal amount of experts down here, and there's a lot of great agents. I'm positive of it. I've worked with a few, but the majority live in this space, right? They're the part-timers, those that are full-timers, or those that, for example, in Florida, I don't know if you're aware, you can take the real estate exam in Spanish. Okay, so listen to this and explain to me how this exactly works. And again, this is not secular racism. I'm all for the American dream. Just I don't understand this specifically. So if I come to this country and I only speak Spanish, I can study for and take the real estate exam and become a real estate agent in Spanish. And that's okay, right? So now let's ask this question. How many legal documents and contracts, addendums, riders exist in Spanish in Florida? The answer to that question is 0. So you're putting someone into the marketplace, and where they first go is their friends and family. Like, that's 101, right? When you first get your license, you reach out to friends and family. I'm now in the business. I'd like to help you. So they start leading individuals into this financial transaction with no concept of contingencies, knowing how to understand what they're signing. And so it boggles my mind that you can do that, and there's not one as-is contract written in Spanish. So how can you interpret something in a language that you don't understand because you've taken the exam in the language that you do? So that to me is something else that's just mind-boggling. At least
it makes a lot of money for the real estate school. So
yeah,
that's like, it's crazy. It's like right now if I go to Istanbul, and I don't know what their native tongue is, but I go, okay, let's say I go to Italy. I go to Italy. I love Italy, by the way. I wish I could live there. But let's suppose I go over there right now, and I'm not really proficient in that language. I really can't communicate, much less to the high degree that I would need to really facilitate a legal transaction, a real estate transaction. But I can take the exam in English. I'll ace it. I'll be a licensed, Italian realtor, and I'm just going to run around into the marketplace and try to figure it out, even though I can't read a document in Italian. It just blows my mind. So.
Yeah, and if there's a problem, you can't go to court in Spanish in the United States.
Right.
Yeah. So things like that, and I don't know. It just so these are things that, and it's not to bash anyone. There's part-time realtors that really do a good job down here, right? But the key is to educate yourself and be a professional in whatever you do. So it's not knocking anyone because they're doing it part-time. It's not knocking anyone but the default thing down here, anyways, is always if something doesn't go right in someone's life, on whether it's their career track or their business, the next thing out of their mouth, I'll just get my real estate license. And there's such a low barrier to entry down here that you can literally drive by a shopping center and throw a pebble into the parking lot. You'll hit someone on the head with a real estate license down here. It's just mind-boggling, so.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Carlos. In my experience, especially in South Florida, I feel that getting a real estate license is like the thing to do, or it's the next accessory. Yeah. And then you have people go out there and try to sell themselves, but have no experience or nothing to back it up with. And I think the public, it's great that it's easy to get a real estate license, but the public is ill-served by that low barrier of entry.
Yeah. And it was funny, I was telling Jerry, and this is every single time, and I always look for this and I laugh. Getting an offer from another, and this is a broker. So this is some of the real estate broker license like I have, right? So you would think another level of aptitude or understanding. So they'll send an offer over, and I'm looking through it, boom, 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 and I'm like, listen, I need your seller's address for service on the contract. You left that blank. He goes, no, I've never filled that out in 20 years I've been doing this. And then you have to explain to them, well, listen, if the parties have an issue where that one's going to sue each other, there has to be a place where they can serve each other. So we need to have an address there. So right now, what I do down here, Ervin, I put care of ABC Brokerage, the broker's name via electronic communication, and I put their email address. And that's it. I put it on there because they just don't, it's like they leave things blank. And the thing down here is basically, at least in my marketplace, from realtors, when you talk about something that it should be done a certain way, but they just don't understand, the answer is like, I've never done that. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess since you've never done that, we'll leave it blank, or don't worry about that signature. It's not important,
Yeah, and the amount of paperwork in California compared to Florida is night and day.
Really?
Oh yeah, I mean, my brokerage firm. So I'm with a Christie's affiliate, but we have a kind of a document list for our transactions. If you're representing a buyer in a transaction, you need to turn these documents in. If you're representing it, if you have a new listing, these are your documents. It all fits in large font on one page. You come to California, and that page is over, I think it's close to 4 pages, and in small font, like font 8, just listing all the documents and everything here. It's impossible here to create things that I used to do on one form in Florida by inserting language or that was clear to everybody, in layman's terms. This is what the seller is going to do. This is what the buyer is going to do. In California, sometimes that takes 3 and 4 separate documents.
Oh my goodness.
And this is where I have a problem with California is we throw 200 pages of documents to close a transaction. And there is no way that any one of our clients can sit there and read that if they have a job or kids at home. And I mean, the disclosures from the county, the state, you end up with a stack of paper this big to buy a house here. And it's impossible for the clients to read it. So in my eyes, I think we're doing more of this service to our clients in California than keeping it simple like we did in Florida. Because everything I would write into a contract, my clients could read and understand it. Here, to extend, to remove a contingency requires this document with 20 lines pertaining to this, X, Y, Z, and that. All we're trying to do is say, okay, the loan contingency has expired. That's it. And then it requires a CRB, isn't it? Contingency removal from the buyer. And literally, you have like 10 or 20 options on that thing, and nobody can see where you checked off because the writing's so small. And I think it's just
in my career of production, while in production, the state of California disclosure went from 4 pages to about 24 pages in my career, and is not showing signs of letting up. I mean, this form will be 50 pages probably in the next 36 months or 48 months. I mean, it's insane at the rate as to which it keeps growing, and it comes out of the courtroom. It's insane. However, I will say, I like to know the difference between how many things end up in court in Florida compared to how many things end up in court here, because, and that would be a good question for Ervin or for Carlos, because out of all the years I've been in business, and partly because of how I practice, I've never been to court. It just never happened. I've never been in mediation, arbitration, any one of those things. I'm actually going to be in a mediation coming up soon for an agent that used to work for a company. And this is a real high profile person with, I'll say what company they work with because you will know who the person is. But this guy used to remember the company. Oh God, Carlos, what was the documentary of the lady that was doing the company that was going to change the world by drawing your blood, and the blood was going to read ethnos or ethnos?
Yeah.
So
she's in jail.
she's in prison. Well, one of her employees is taking me to court over $30,000, which just boggles my mind because, although $30,000 is a lot of money, the fact that $30,000 means anything to this person just blows my mind. And but I just find it interesting that in all these years, the contract, you talk about the release of contingencies and things like that came a long way after I started in the business, because release of contingencies were done by drafting an addendum, and we would just practice law by drafting language, right? So a lot of times what has happened here in California is the attorneys have sort of taken their power back and their expertise back and said, hey, listen, real estate untrained eye, we're going to give you some language so you don't mess it up. So I'm just curious if there is more room for messing it up in Florida than there is here. Just a question.
I think on the addendums, I don't know if you agree, Ervin, I think it's pretty cut and dry in Florida, right? To change a contingency is super easy. They even have specific addendums for that specific contingency. And even for any change, it's so simple. So for example, if you're in a listing contract, if you're going to lower the price, for example, there's something, a simple form you sent to the client to agree to the price change, for example. Or if you're changing, extending the closing date, or it's super straightforward. So it's not as convoluted as it appears to be in California anyways.
Yeah, I just did an extension of closing date for a transaction I have in Tampa. And it's a simple form. You can send that form to a non-college educated person and they can totally understand it, and it's not overwhelming. The issue is with the documents here in Florida, they're very overwhelming.
I love what you said because I really can understand the part about not being able to read all that. There's just the time is just not there for people to sit down and read every document. And I've always found it dangerous that what we do now is we are e-signing everything. And we also know that the consumer is not reading that. We're just basically putting it on their lap. You know how we jump into an app and you agree to the terms and conditions? None of us read those. So we know that people are only looking for like the price or the listing term, or they look for 2 or 3 little things. Once they find those, they don't read any of the other fine print, which, as you say, then falls back on the agent to say, hey, listen, at least let's spend some time going through this to make sure that you understand everything. And that is where a fiduciary is supposed to do their job and be trusted to do their job. But we know that a high percentage of people don't carve out the time to do that because now it's too easy to e-sign or docu-sign something over to you and just have it back in a second.
But I'll tell you, it's funny because, I think that to piggyback on that, educating the consumer is very important, but not just for the sake of educating them to know what's happening. It's for your peace of mind and to avoid problems down the road. So down here, for example, if we do, and Marta, if we have a listing meeting with a client or whatever the case may be, already from that listing, besides the fact that we already before that meeting, I already sent them a copy of the listing agreement so they can start looking it over and not be pressured in our presence to understand. We also, once we list them, we give them a copy of what the contract, when you get an offer, is going to look like. And I tell them, if you have an attorney, send it to them, take a look at it. It's a standard as is. We use a FAR bar, blah, blah, blah. But at least that document is not going to be a surprise when they get that offer and they have those emotions going and the offer's in front of them. And what does this mean? What does that mean? And it really eliminates a lot of downtime when you have to explain the contract in the foot while a potential offer is afoot, whether it's not a foreign document to them. And I think, look, it's litigious, right? This is a litigious world we live in, and everyone sues everybody. Go ahead, Jerry.
I did it twice. I did
That was Jerry's.
the first time I put the finger up, you looked
Ervin,
away. I'm like, wait a
Ervin,
minute, I gotta do it again.
Ervin, you know, like in meetings when you raise your hand, you click the little icon and it shows a little digital hand. That's how Jerry does it. That's how Jerry does it. He does it physically. Hey, but
no, I was just curious if it sounded like, you know, our cousin Yvette Rodriguez is the person that, not because she's your cousin, because she's highly trained and really good at that. I mean, if Yvette drills down, but it sounds like in Florida, you could have a client go to Yvette and just start working with her immediately, right? You could, right?
no, we include it from the beginning. So
That's amazing. We don't have that. We don't have that over here. Like
yeah,
that.
yeah, from the beginning. And then not only that, for example, the sellers in that initial conversation with the sellers, I already tell them, listen, who we work with, you can choose whoever you want, but we usually work with Yvette Rodriguez PA. She's been an attorney for 27 years, and I give her the whole resume. She's part of the team, and it's like when you have a superstar team, you don't want to take away your fourth batter and replace someone that really is foreign just because they have a title of an attorney, right? So that usually works out. And then I tell them, and just to let you know, once we go to contract as a seller, she's going to represent you as a seller. So she's going to give you legal representation during a transaction and do the seller side docs, so on and so forth. That I will explain to them. If we have a buyer come and she's also the escrow and title agent, she's not going to be able to serve you with your interest. So she's going to just serve the transaction. And so I explained that to them, and they totally understand it, you know. But listen, down here, everyone sues everyone. And God, knock on wood, we've never had any kind of legal action. But the key to avoid that is to make sure that whenever you're representing whatever side, that your shit is so tight that when they Google to an attorney, the attorney's going to tell them, this is a losing proposition. You know how many times, and I'm curious to see what your answer is to this. I'm going to give you a ballpark of how many times we've collected a deposit sitting in escrow because of the type of agents that we work with down here. At least 10 times. 10 times. That's 10 times. That's a lot. Ervin, is that crazy? Mm-hmm. We had another condo. You're familiar with Miami Beach, obviously.
Yeah.
So we had a beautiful oceanfront condo. We go to contract, and you know how it goes. When you first meet that other side of the transaction, you'll know automatically when you meet that person if like, oh, this is going to be an awesome transaction, or oh, this is going to be a problem, right? This was an older lady. You can tell she had a few dollars. She dressed to the nines, expensive purse, the Chanel shoes, the whole 9 yards. So when I first met her, I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. You know, she's been in this for a while. She seems knowledgeable, whatever. So long story short, fast forward, we're asking for she was representing the buyer, and we had the listing. So I started asking, listen, we're coming up to the financing contingency deadline. We don't have a loan commitment from your side, whatever. Oh, we're working on it. Hey, listen, you're passing a deadline. Then it's going to turn into a cash transaction. You can lose your deposit. Oh, we're not losing anything. So just ghosted me, right? And we move forward, and now we're getting close to the closing date, right? So I'm like, hey, listen, you know you lost your deposit right now. Unless your buyer's going to buy all cash, that 50 grand that you have there, it was a sizable amount. It's gone. You understand that? She goes, oh, you're not taking anything. I'm like, okay. So long story short, they lost their deposit. It sits in escrow. And what they don't understand is that as an escrow agent in Florida, you have a couple of options when that happens. Obviously, as real estate professionals, we have to notify the FREC that we have an escrow dispute. But the escrow agent, usually Yvette does this. She sits back and lets the parties try to resolve what's going to happen with that money in escrow, which both parties have to agree to. So in this matter, they said, we want it back. And we said, you're not getting it back. So the next option is for the escrow agent to start an interpleader action with the courts where they get the money, they put it with the courts. And it's funny because their legal fees to do that also have to be covered in that process. So we sat there and she said, I'm going to get an attorney. Perfect. Her attorney reached out and our attorney, and long story short, the advice that their attorney gave them is like, you lost the deposit, and it was gone. And that's happened over and over and over and over again. And it just blows my mind. It blows my mind.
In California, they have to actively release those contingencies versus in Florida, they expire. Just going back to the documents in California, though, versus Florida.
Yeah. I
feel a large part of the documents in California are to protect the agent. You know, they can say, hey, 100%. You signed on this, versus in Florida, there's a little bit more leeway for the agent to be found at fault on things, where in California, there's frankly no room for the agent to be found at fault because there's a documentation about everything. And the last thing I want to say is, unfortunately, those who sue, let's say, suing someone is a sport of the wealthy. And unfortunately, most people that are probably hurt by agents malpractice are people who can't afford an attorney or don't have the knowledge that they were wronged and should see an attorney.
Beautifully said.
That's so poignant right now. And I was reading a study last week. I'll email it to you, Ervin. Just give me your email. Since you're forward also. So this was a study that looked at the issue of single agency, transaction brokers, no brokerages, how it affects the market, what happens in Florida, the pros, the cons, blah, 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 blah. So it's funny because usually 9 times out of 10, if a transaction broker that's representing the client in that capacity, you can't even call him the client. You can't even call him the principal. You call him the buyer, let's say. Representing them, they have to the agent is protected because they're giving them that limited amount of representation. So when they make that mistake, that major mistake in the transaction, obviously barring something illegal, that major mistake, there's no legal redress to sue them because of the level of representation that the client agreed to, and it's a default representation here. So they don't have to tell them about it. So you can sue a single agent because they have such a higher level of responsibility and duties. So that's more protection for the client. So these transaction brokers are good to go. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And no attorney is going to sue them or their brokerage because, hey, listen, they serve you as a transaction broker, and they're going to be like, what? What's that? And that goes back to the whole, awareness thing. It's funny. A question for Ervin. Ervin, in the Orlando market, is it as Wild West as it is down here with all the things we talked about?
No.
Or is it no?
No. I practiced, like I said, in Washington, D.C., New York, Orlando, Tampa, and here in California. I've never seen anything like Miami.
It's funny. Yeah, it's crazy.
Living in New York, I did a lot of work when I was working with the new developments in Manhattan. I would go down to Miami because Miami's like the 6th borough of New York City.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, in New York, there was a Chinese buyer who only spoke Chinese, didn't speak English. I went down to Miami. I won't say the brokerage firm that was representing this development, but they had an American agent who spoke fluent Chinese. So we set up a referral agreement. This guy ends up buying 20 units at Brickell City Center. And this was before Brickell City Center was even allowing multiple unit sales.
Yeah.
I actually had to sue them to get my commissions with a signed referral agreement, with emails, everything. I had to hire an attorney to get my referral agreement from them. And then their broker, by the way, ended up letting them go. Also, the agent was found guilty of mortgage fraud. And I was like, how did this guy get a real estate license? And the mortgage broker ends up firing this agent, and the brokerage firm ends up firing the agent. My attorney went after the brokerage firm and the agent, all of them. But the brokerage firm says, that was an agreement between you and the agent. We didn't have anything to do with it. I said, wait a minute. A referral was made to your brokerage firm that was a transaction that was being handled by your agent. How could you just wash your hands of it?
But that's what they understand. Any agreement with any agent, it's not with the agent, it's with the brokerage.
Yeah.
So in Florida, you have the commission has to be paid to the broker unless they give authorization that closing to pay the agent directly, whatever. But it's with the brokerage. The relationship, transaction broker, single agent, no brokerage relationship, it's with the brokerage. The agent is an arm of that brokerage, right?
Correct.
So that's, but hey, welcome to Miami. That's Miami in a nutshell for you.
And then the gall to, I give somebody a referral and they're just like, oh, we're not going to pay you. Like, what? Nowhere has that ever happened to me.
Let me tell you, the only Miami-like experience I had was we sent a client to North Carolina, somewhere up there. And I researched, I tried to look for a decent agent. I interviewed a few of them. And then one really like, okay, listen, I like this one, to find a place for them. And then we did a referral agreement, same thing, and they did the transaction and she totally didn't even pay us. And I emailed her, hey, listen, you already closed on that. And it wasn't a crazy amount of money. It was like, what was the home, like $400,000 or $500,000, whatever it was. And it was like, no, we don't pay, whatever. And then I was like, oh, and to now hire an attorney in North Carolina, whatever. I let it go. But like, it's crazy. Like when that happens, like, dude, honor your word. And that's the thing down here. I mean, as a real estate agent, you're at a different level because you have your reputation precedes you. So we know that Ervin is not going anywhere, right? But for the most part, I explain to clients the regular real estate agent down here that really doesn't have ties to where they're working or what they're doing. And I tell them this is how fast they can switch brokerages. The broker logs in to the system, puts their license number in, presses a button, and poof, they're at another brokerage just like that.
Yeah.
So that's how fast it is. So I explained to them, listen, we're a family brokerage. We've been around for a ton of years. It's my name. It's a family brokerage. Look at our website. We're not going to disappear and create another family, right? I'm not changing my name because I'm doing people dirty. So it's a whole, your skin is really in the game, right? And
I'm
just
just
like
always,
you,
Ervin, I'm always amazed that Carlos even has to have that conversation. That's just not even a conversation we have over here.
Which one?
Well, the conversation of, hey, we're not going anywhere that other people can.
Right. Right.
You know, I mean, we're spoiled, I think, in this tiny little market of Napa Valley that we're in, because for the most part, integrity is, I mean, would you say that too, Ervin? You're the newer comer.
Yeah, because it's not a big, so it's difficult for us to have a transitional or transient real estate industry in Napa because everybody knows one another. But in Miami, where the barrier to entry is so much lower, you get a lot of people just transitioning. I mean, just coming through, just coming through. And the town itself, I mean, you know, it's a big destination for second, third, and fourth homes. And so it attracts a lot of people that are in Miami for a year or two.
And if you look hot, you should be able to sell houses.
One of my first Miami experience, I was still living in New York City, and I went down to Miami. It was the financial crisis. The new developments were pricing was, you know, the trajectory was down. And I'm talking about, this was 2008, maybe early 2009, still hasn't hit the bottom. And I spoke to the sales director at one of these developments, and I said, and she's, I mean, really selling it. And I was like, but don't you think it's not the right time to buy now? It's not a good time to buy right now. She goes, what? Yesterday was better. If you didn't buy yesterday, you should buy today. That was her thing.
I remember before Susan and I purchased a second home out in the North Star area of Lake Tahoe, we were thinking of buying in Brickell, and we walked into the offices of this luxury skyrise out on Brickell, and you guys, you walk in there, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I was still stunned because this was probably like 12, 15 years ago, and we walk in, and it was like if we were walking into, I just can't even explain it. It was like if we're walking into a runway. You know, the next agent was more beautiful than the next one, men or women. Everybody was so gorgeous, and you would talk to them. They were so friendly, but you knew that was not the person you were sitting with at the signing table. They would spin you and send you to somebody else. And then there were the other guys or gals that were just out there to process the transaction. And I just thought, man, this is just a well-oiled engine of illusion. You know, and the illusion just carries you through. And I can see all those, you know, South Americans and all that, they come to the United States and they see this and how they can be whisked away into a transaction that might not be in their best interest. It's the Wild West, for lack of a better term. But Carlos, you do a beautiful job navigating it. Miami has been your home forever, as it was mine for a long time, as it's been Ervin. You know, the state of Florida is near and dear to our hearts with all its flaws. The state of California is not removed from flaws either. We have all of our own very special and unique issues over here. And I think for the most part, we're all grateful to live where we live because they're special places in their own right. We're coming up against the hour, you guys, so I want to honor your times. And I know that we stayed up a little late to do this today because we really wanted to get Ervin, and a little bit we got Hilda. Next time she'll say a lot more. But I really wanted to just thank you, Ervin. I hope maybe you're interested in doing this again. I hope you can use this maybe in some of your own marketing pieces, because our director of operations, Idisham, does a great job turning this into some real valuable shorts that you can post on Instagram and reels and things like that. And I think the conversation has been wonderful. And I personally would love to do it again. Seriously.
Absolutely. Well, Ervin, now you have a connection down here in Miami, a reliable connection.
Yeah, by the way, and Hilda did a loan for Carlos personally in Miami.
Yeah,
So
she did our investment property. She was amazing, and we refer our clients now to her. And after all these years, after all these horror stories in broker with the mortgage brokers as well, we're dealing with someone in Napa because she's amazing in comparison. So yeah, we send everybody to her, and truly a blessing, really.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It was great to. I don't get to have this discussion between compare Florida and California too much, but
yeah,
they are
and next time we'll do it with pastelito de guayaba y queso.
Nah, Acapurria.
Hey, my Puerto Rican cohort, you got to realize that out of all the people in my Cuban side of the family, out of all of them, Carlos is the only one that doesn't take a jab at me for being Puerto Rican. Cubans are brutal, man.
That's what.
Let me tell you, hey, Ervin, when we went to Napa, was it this time or I think the last time, for Alana's wedding, we took a box of fresh pastelitos from here. Like we carried it in the airplane, and when we took it to Jerry's house and opened it, and I took a second look, well, they're all gone, right, Jerry? They were like gone. So I'm like, hey, if we open a little pasteleria over here, again, we'd have to find someone to run it, but I mean, it would be like crazy.
Yeah.
Talking about this, I'm hungry now.
Yeah.
Hey, say hello to William for being cool with this. It's only 5:30 here. It's 8:30 where Carlos is. So Carlos, thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for joining us, Ervin. Absolutely a pleasure. Hopefully this is the first of many to come. And we thank you for your professionalism and what you're doing in the real estate world, and really serving as a shining light for those of us down here in the Wild West.
And if you like what you heard, please subscribe, like, hit us with a comment, ask any questions. We'll be happy to answer any of those questions pertaining to real estate for you. Have a great evening. Have a great day.
See ya.